So when I built this gun, I used the Geissele Super 42 buffer system with the braided spring and an H2 buffer, and turned out that was too heavy. Geissele does not sell just the buffer without the spring or without the buffer tube as a whole system. So instead, I had to buy some steel buffer weights, take out the tungsten, and make the H2 into an H1. And so far, it seems to be working. Much better. Welcome back to Sawtooth Tactical. One of the things that I love about building your own rifles, your own firearms in general, is all the different things that can happen that you can learn from to better understand your weapon system and how the whole thing works. One of the most important parts of that is your gas system, which goes with your buffer system. And so we're going to talk about that today, because whether you build or just buy a rifle, you can tune it to be very soft shooting, but also very reliable just by changing out $1 weights. So this week's video is about tuning your buffer system. But I learned last week that my rifle was not zeroed. So zeroing it at 100, I think I've got it pretty dang close by now. I'll take it. The idea for this video came from my last two builds. My 300 blackout build here, and my newest 14.5-inch pin and weld 5.56, the Dream Rifle build series that we just finished. Both of these builds had some buffer weight issues, and your buffer weight and your gas system kind of go together. You need enough gas to cycle the action, but enough buffer weight to not make that action so violent, but not so much weight that it doesn't cycle all the way and that it short strokes. And I've had issues with both of the last two builds that I've done, but they're easy issues to fix, and that's the great thing here. And so that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. She's working. The reason why I say it's one of the things that I love about building is because in the past, I didn't really give a whole lot of thought to my buffer system or my gas system on guns that I just purchased, and I got them out of the box and they ran, right? Because a manufacturer that builds firearms is hopefully going to build it with the correct gas system and buffer system to make it reliable. One thing I have found is that generally, a lot of these manufacturers are going to have an overgassed gun to make sure that it's reliable. But your gun can be a lot softer shooting, and you can make those adjustments yourself pretty easily. So the very first example I'm going to talk about was with my 300 blackout build. And I kind of did a video about this, about getting this thing to run once I got the can and started running subsonic ammo through it. When I first built this, I built it with the Geissele Super 42 buffer system with an H2 buffer. Now, in hindsight, 2020, I realized that was probably not the correct choice for a 300 blackout build. But I thought it was the right amount of weight, and it probably might have been, maybe, probably not actually. But Geissele themselves even recommends not to use their Super 42 system with a subsonic 300 blackout. I didn't know that until I got it and read the stuff that comes in the packaging, and then I was like, oh, well, we'll see if this works. It ran supersonic ammo just fine, perfectly reliably from day one. As soon as I got the suppressor and started running subs, it was not reliable. Sometimes it would run a couple rounds at a time, sometimes just one. Before short stroking, I would get an ejection, but it wouldn't pick up the next round. And so I kind of had to go back to the drawing board and figure out what to do about that. I pulled off the handguard, the gas block, made sure everything was aligned correctly. It was. It was just that I was using the wrong buffer system for, subsonic 300 blackout rounds. So what did I do? I ordered a standard 3-ounce carbine buffer and a Springco yellow spring. The yellow is the reduced power spring. And now this gun runs perfectly reliably supersonic and subsonic ammo, and it's very soft shooting, especially with subs. Pretty quiet. The other example that we're going to use for this video is this. This is my 14.5 Dream rifle build. I literally built this rifle exactly the way I wanted it, all the parts that I wanted, the dream rifle, right? Well, I did my research on this one, and I still went with the Geissele Super 42 braided wire buffer system because it's a good system. And Geissele has these anodized buffer tubes that match what you're doing, OD green on this one, flat dark earth, or what Geissele calls their desert dirt color on the 300 blackout. And so you can get a high quality buffer system, but also have it match the color theme of your build, right? So I went with the Super 42 and I went with an H2 buffer again, because after doing my research with a 14.5 inch mid-length gas system, an H2 buffer is what is recommended. Well, the rifle wasn't very reliable when I first started taking it out and shooting it. Which was a little bit disappointing to me. You put all this time and money into building the perfect rifle, do your research on what buffer system should work with your gas system, and then it doesn't run. Well, every barrel, not every barrel, but every model of barrel can have a different size gas port. And I went with a Roscoe barrel in this one. Part of the reason is because I didn't want an oversized gas port. I wanted a really soft shooting gun. Well, the H2 was a little too much weight for the gas port size and the mid-length length of the gas system for this gun. So I still wanted to use the Geissele Super 42 system. I'd already had to take it out of this gun, and it's not a cheap buffer system. I didn't want to waste 2 Geissele Super 42 buffer systems. So I called up Geissele because I looked everywhere online and you can't just buy the buffer itself. I wanted to just get an H1 buffer, but you have to get the whole setup, the tube, the spring, and the buffer. Well, I already had 2 Geissele buffer tubes, 2 braided springs, and 2 Geissele H2 buffers. And the problem is that the Geissele spring, this is not it, is braided, and so the inner diameter is smaller, so the Geissele buffer actually has a smaller diameter, so you can't use a standard buffer with the Geissele spring. So I called Geissele up. I told them what my issue was. And what they recommended that I do is just order a steel buffer weight or 2 and tune the system that way. And that's what I did, and it was a $1 fix. In this bag right here, we have a steel buffer weight and a tungsten buffer weight. I bought 2 of the steel buffer weights because they were $1 a piece. The shipping was $10, so the shipping literally cost 5 times as much as the product I was getting. But I didn't want to just have one and have it not be enough of a change and need to order another one and pay $10 shipping again. So I got 2 steel buffer weights, and I only had to use one, of course. But it was very easy. So you have your buffer here. There's a roll pin that goes through it. Knock that out. A pair of channel locks. You can pull the rubber thing out of the back. And then inside of your buffer are buffer weights. And depending on which buffer weight you have, whether it's a carbine buffer, it's going to be all steel weights. An H1 is going to have 1 tungsten weight and 2 steel weights. An H2 is going to have 2 tungsten weights, 1 steel weight. H3, 3 tungsten weights. Follow me? So I pulled apart the Geissele H2 buffer, switched out one of those tungsten weights. In fact, that one came out of it for the steel buffer. Put it back in, went back to the range. I brought an extra spring and buffer with me that was lighter just in case, because I wanted to fill, I wanted to shoot and I wanted it to run. And I knew it would run with this lighter spring and buffer. This is just a standard carbine spring and buffer that I actually pulled out of my 16-inch carbine length gas system barrel, or AR-15, and threw in my 14.5 because it did work. I actually used that other Geissele Super 42 H2, now lives in this gun, and it does make it a little bit softer shooting than it came from the factory, which is kind of my point, to where you can take an overgassed factory gun and make it a little bit more mellow feeling, a little bit lighter recoil impulse, and just make your gun more pleasurable to shoot. For this gun, I wanted it right on the edge of, not at the edge of reliability, but kind of. I wanted it as soft shooting as possible, but still reliable. And so the way that you can do that is literally with these $1 buffer weights. The H2 was almost good for it. Sometimes it would run a whole mag. Sometimes it would only run a round or two before it would short stroke and you'd have to charge the system again. So by switching out that one weight and making that H2 into an H1, this gun is now perfectly reliable. And it's got just the right amount of weight to where it's extremely soft shooting. This 14.5 inch with a mid-length gas system and a flash hider on it is softer shooting by a lot than the 16-inch gun with a carbine length with a muzzle brake. So even though this one has a muzzle brake, the recoil impulse is rougher than this gun with the mid-length gas system. It's got me, I'm a believer now. In fact, I want to switch out the barrel on my 16-inch to a barrel with a mid-length gas system, because it really makes that much of a difference. When you shoot them side by side, it's very noticeable. But this gun now just shoots super soft, but it's perfectly reliable. The other thing you are going to have to think about, though, is the ammo that you're running. So I've been running a lot of PMC X-Tac lately, and I got it running perfectly with that ammo. When we thought we had this ammo crisis a few weeks back, I found a bunch of this online from Grab-A-Gun, actually. And it was like the cheapest ammo around at the time, and honestly one of the only 5.56, 223 rounds that I could find at a decent price. So I ordered 100 rounds of it, and I wanted to try it out while I was out at the range testing out my new buffer weight, and because I've never run this ammo before. And it ran perfectly fine, although it did not lock the bolt back on the last round. You'll see that in the shooting footage today. So even that, you do have to think about whether you're running hotter ammo or underpowered ammo and adjust your buffer accordingly. During the 3-week-long ammo crisis, this was the only thing I could find for a little bit. I'd never used it before, 223 Scorpio. So we're gonna try it out right now and see how it does. So I really hope I wasn't too all over the place in this video. The point being that if you have a gun, if you're building a gun and it doesn't reliably run, doesn't lock back on the last round, change out one tungsten weight for steel weight might be all you need to do. If your gun seems to be overgassed and you feel like there's too violent of a recoil impulse for like a 5.56 gun, which should be very soft shooting, Maybe you want to pull a steel weight out and add a tungsten weight. Point being that a little bit of a difference in buffer weight can make a big difference in how your rifle runs. And that's just one of the benefits of building your own rifles, is you get to learn these lessons that you probably don't if you just buy a gun off the shelf and start shooting it. So, like I always say, I do recommend getting into building guns if you're into guns at all. It'll teach you a ton about the platform. Plus, it's just fun. You get to pick every part you want, and you can literally build out your dream gun and pay for it over time by buying one part at a time. I really see, it's all benefits to me building the gun. The only con really is that you're not going to have a warranty like you will with an out-of-the-box gun, but you are your own warranty. If something doesn't work, you know how to fix it, and that's kind of the point. If you enjoyed this video, please give me a like, share this with anybody that you think might be interested in learning this kind of stuff. Let me know down in the comments if you've had to tune buffer systems before. Let me know what's worked well for you. I almost went with the Volter A5 system on this build, and when at first it didn't run reliably, I kind of wished I had. But at this point, I'm really happy with the Geissele Super 42 system. But let me know what you have experience with and what works for you. I answer every comment, and I love interacting with you guys. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped.